Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, June 19th. I'm Robert Blaskowitz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Join with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times Assistant Managing Editor, Krista Zavanovic. Let's start off talking about a story that we had in Sunday's edition on a Gary School Board member, Marion Williams, who was found to be delinquent on a number of in paying property taxes on a number of properties he owns. He owns a number of different lots, and one of his arguments was that the lots are basically not worth anything, and he's trying to work out a way to make this economically feasible. But there is a larger issue here in Gary, particular, with the number of delinquent properties, the properties that have very low or little value, and the problems it causes for the schools in particular, who have this assessed valuation, which is really inaccurate because they're not collecting these taxes.
And there's so many layers to this problem. The Gary School District is only collecting about 42% of its property taxes, and part of the reason is because people who own the property are not paying their taxes because they believe the property is way overassessed and it's worthless. He bought these properties, he said, in the 80s because he thought Gary was on the upswing and that his property would increase in value, he'd be able to develop it. But he said that never happened, and he can't get a loan from a bank to improve the property. So he said he wishes somebody would buy them at tax sale and take them off his hand.
Well, and we've seen that happen time and time again. I mean, these properties just keep going through the tax sales, one right after the other, because people buy them, they realize they're worthless, and they're stuck with a huge amount of debt. Now, here's a guy who's, a public official, so he's got, as I recall, somewhere north of half a million. Yeah.
Correct.
He's a deadbeat in this case. But the problem is, you need to combine these properties. Now, Lake County's assessor was great to talk about this in the past week, to say, look, if you combined these properties, then you can save money on them. And, frankly, some of them are just too small. You can't do anything with them. If you can put them together, then you've got a project.
And she said, that's Julie Kovaciu, the current Lake County tax assessor. She said, though, there are rules. It only works if they're contiguous, and there are some other rules along with that. I just want to make it clear for readers to know the only reason we appeared to be picking on Marion Williams was because he is a school board member and he voted not to close schools. And the reason that the schools have a $23 million deficit is partly because they can't collect the taxes. So we thought it was disingenuous of him to vote to keep schools open and help perpetuate this school debt when he takes in, between the past 2 years, $9,000 to $11,000 a year as a Gary School Board member, and yet he doesn't want to pay the taxes that help support his per diem and keeping the schools going. So we are trying to be judicious. We're getting more tips on other tax scofflaws, but we're only choosing certain people to report on who have a connection such as this and conflicting loyalties.
Yeah.
Right. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So, shifting over to the ongoing issue of E911 consolidation. The latest action was taken by Cedar Lake. You want to talk about what they did and where this is going?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Cedar Lake just voted this week to join with the Rebel Alliance, as I like to call it, with Cherville, and start, building a second site, which, we've already reported is, highly questionable whether that's even legal, and we tend to doubt it. But, here they are. They're just getting started. It's June, folks. The deadline is the end of the year. This is going to be a really tough one.
Yes, and we're still looking at reporting on the PSAPs, or answering points, as they're called. Apparently, Porter County has several. Marion County has several. Marion County got a special pass from the General Assembly. I don't think they're going to give Lake County a special pass. But they did reiterate, the legislators who wrote the legislation, they wanted 2 answering points, but they were supposed to be unified, and one was going to be kept dark in case the other area was, disabled for some reason.
Which is contrary to what some of the South Lake officials were saying.
So we'll carry on and keep reporting on it and letting people know what's happening.
Well, and what's at stake, is there's a financial penalty if they don't do it. They lose you've got an E911 fee tacked onto your phone bill. You stand to lose that. Keep in mind, this isn't just Lake County, Porter County as well, although, we haven't really heard as much about it over there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Wanted to talk about something that we're working on for tomorrow's edition. Very important for, if you're watching this, you're probably politically engaged, you're probably a voter. This is something you really need to pay attention to, and that's postcards that are being sent out by the Secretary of State's office to registered voters that are asking for a response. If people don't respond, what's going to happen, Krista?
Well, I guess the first set of postcards that went out, and many people got them, and a lot of people complained to us and said, I've lived in this house for 35 years, I've voted in every election, I'm a registered voter. Why are they sending me this postcard to see if I'm really me and I'm registered and I live here? I think they did that supposedly so if the cards came back, they would know you didn't live there. But if the cards went and there was no complaint, then they figured you lived there. They're going to be sending out a second group of cards now, and I think that you will have to respond to those to let them know. And these cards, they're hoping, will be forwarded to whatever address you move to. The problem with that is that if it's past the 6 months that you told the post office, it might not get forwarded, you might not get it. And basically, in its defense, the Secretary of State's office for Indiana is trying to make sure they're trying to clean up the voter rolls and make sure that everyone who's registered are legit and live where they say they do.
Yeah, it's part of the effort to purge the voter rolls, to purge out inactive or voters that have moved out of the state or have
Correct.
died or
right.
whatever.
I mean, I had a former coworker, for instance, we were at the funeral together and in Hammond, and she was in tears saying, my mother voted for 30 years and she'll never vote again. I said, well, you don't know that, and this is what this is trying to get at is preventing people like from using improper voter records.
But there is a bigger issue in the state of Indiana. Indiana's 38th in voter turnout. We have a lot of issues. We have a very strict law for voter registration.
Voter ID law.
Voter ID law.
In fact, we were one of the first in the country with the voter ID law.
Right.
A lot of other states modeled their voter ID law after Indiana's.
So we're going to be looking at this more as the months go on as we head toward the November elections. But
Yeah.
tomorrow, look for the story, and Dan Cardin will explain all to you.
Yeah, and the Secretary of State's office is one of the offices up for election
Correct.
this
Right.
year. So that's something that the Democratic candidate came and visited with us and told her that this is one of her
Yes, Beth
her
White
issues.
said she's going to make that her platform issue. And interesting, the current Secretary of State did not run for that post. She was appointed by the governor.
Connie Lawson.
Connie
Yeah.
Lawson, so.
So, and that's, this is an
Learning
office
on the
where you
job.
think, it's pretty dull. All they do is administer
Right.
elections and, business licenses and stuff. But there are these issues that will be key for Indiana's future.
And
So,
occasionally they go to jail.
well,
Our last Secretary of State, you might remember.
Which is why
why,
Connie Lawson was appointed,
Charlie
right.
Yeah, so.
exactly.
Yeah. So that's all the time we have. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with another political roundtable.